Now, monumental rotundas are Greek in origin, so I'll use occasionally the Greek name for them, tholoi, and the foundational work on them really is a book from 1939, Themelae, written by Finley Fellow, who argued that all such temples imitated primitive huts, which is an idea we can discard, and more importantly, that they housed chthonic cults because they purposefully recalled burial mounds. And Robert's point of departure was this tholos at Epidavros, which was the first, he thought, monumental tholos of the Greek world. Epidavros was the great sanctuary of the healer god Asclepios, whom Zeus killed with a thunderbolt for raising the dead, only later to repent and make Asclepius a god too. And the tholos at Epidavros, a very mysterious building, was called the Thymelae, or Thumelae, which means altar, and Robert argued that it became one when libations were poured through a grate in the center of its floor into these famous maze-like substructures below. And all of this led him to conclude that this tholos was a heroon, that is, a shrine to a hero, dedicated to Asclepios in his mortal aspect, so as a man, while he was instead worshipped as a god in that rectangular temple you can see just nearby. And in this light, later scholars have tried to identify other later following as hero shrines as well, like this quite famous one at Delphi, but without really turning up any evidence that is truly compelling. There is nonetheless a case to be made for linking tholoi with mound tombs and hero worship. The beehive tombs of the Mycenaean era, the Age of Heroes, were not sealed up after single burials, but continued to receive the bodies of other members of the clan. And they also became the venues of hero or ancestor cults, which are in practice rather difficult to distinguish, from about the 8th century BC and all the way into the Roman period, meaning that the same building functioned as both a tomb and a temple. And the best example of all this is this so-called treasury of Minias at Orchomenos, again about 1250 BC, and before its vault, which was very famous in antiquity, collapsed, this was just as impressive as the treasury, so-called treasury of Atreus at Mycenae, which will probably be more familiar to you. This, as you can see, if you look at the two images on the right, you'll be able to see a structure in the center, or just off the center of the tomb, and that's actually an altar and possibly a statue base of uncertain date, but at least a millennium after the construction of the tomb. So this shows you this was open, was used for cultic purposes, and perhaps the center of the tomb was actually used as a shrine, whereas the chamber off on the side was maybe the only part used for burial of the defunct. It's not really known. However, both tombs, this and the treasury, so-called treasury of Atreus at Mycenae, were once studded with bronze ornaments, rosettes, stars, spirals, whorls, whatever, probably gilded, so that the environment would have been a cross between the underworld, so catabasis, going down into the underworld, and catasterism, that is, burial amongst the stars. Widespread ancestor worship and heroization quite probably influenced the much later philosopher fabulist Euhemerus of Messene, who around 300 BC taught that, quote, certain gods were eternal and imperishable, such as the sun, moon, and stars, but the others were terrestrial beings who had only acquired the status of gods because of their benefactions to mankind, unquote. And according to this theory, even Zeus himself was an ancient king, and he was supposedly buried on Crete, either in a mountain cave or a large tomb outside Knossos, which may therefore itself have been a beehive tomb.